during the WNBA season. Oh my gosh, all the ratings, the record ratings, blah, 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 blah. But what did we say continuously here on this channel? Yeah, record ratings. Of course you guys are going to have record ratings. Nielsen changed how they count numbers. Of course their ratings are going to be more. It would be kind of embarrassing if they were that much less. Well, Sustainable, Unrivaled, their numbers came out and they are less.
They announced their plans boldly. They sold the vision aggressively. And they delivered their message with the kind of certainty that makes people stop and reread the fine print. Because confidence that's strong feels like it must be backed by something substantial. Every statement suggested stability. Every projection implied growth. The future was portrayed as locked in. But confidence means nothing if reality doesn't follow. If this project truly had momentum, if it genuinely had legs, the second season's debut should have reflected that energy. Instead, it felt empty. Visually, metaphorically, and statistically, it resembled an abandoned parking lot, quiet, hollow, and scattered with remnants of expectations that never arrived. Momentum doesn't disappear overnight without a reason. When excitement is real, it compounds. When interest is authentic, audiences return. But when curiosity fades and engagement drops, it usually means the initial spark was never fully anchored. People tuned in once, looked around, and decided it wasn't enough to bring them back. That's the harsh reality no promotional campaign can override. You can generate awareness, but you can't force loyalty. You can launch loudly, but sustaining attention requires more than novelty. It requires emotional investment, recognizable stakes, and reasons for fans to care week after week. The second season didn't fail because of bad luck. It failed because the foundation wasn't as solid as advertised. What looked like confidence in year one turned out to be momentum borrowed from timing, curiosity, and favorable circumstances. Once those factors faded, the structure was exposed. And when a league has to rely on explaining why empty space still represents success, the audience has already delivered its verdict.
Could be seeing its final days as Paige Beckers and gang could not save the viewership from tanking. What does this mean for the WNBA when they make their return back to TV? We finna talk about it all. I told you guys a couple months ago that the views was going down on the channel. Like the WNBA content wasn't looking too good. I was one of the first people to say that about the whole genre itself. Told y'all we was gonna be making big time changes on the channel. Now I say that to say this. Now there has been news to come out about Unrivaled viewership being down nearly 7.
Picture this unfolding slowly over several months. At first, everything appears pristine, perfectly aligned, and almost too good to question. The numbers look strong, the applause grows louder, and confidence fills every press release. Then, quietly, something begins to feel off. The data starts acting strangely. Metrics no longer line up the way they once did. Long-standing benchmarks suddenly feel outdated, and new standards conveniently appear to take their place. That's when the cheering intensifies, not because things are improving, but because the narrative needs reinforcement. Instead of addressing the inconsistencies head-on, the rules for success begin to bend. What once counted as a clear victory is redefined. Measurements are reframed. Expectations are lowered without ever being announced. And right now, there's a noticeable silence hanging in the air, one that everyone involved seems determined to ignore. No statements, no explanations, just a collective decision to move forward as if nothing changed. That silence is the most revealing part. When an organization suddenly needs to reinvent how it measures success, it's rarely because things are thriving. It's usually because the original system is telling an uncomfortable story. Rather than confront that story, a new one is written, carefully designed to distract, confuse, or soften the reality. This isn't about innovation or progress. It's about control. If you redefine what winning means, you can claim victory even while losing ground. The danger isn't just misleading investors or fans. It's eroding trust. Once people sense that results are being massaged rather than earned, confidence collapses quickly. So the real question isn't whether the numbers changed. It's why they had to. When success needs a new definition to survive, it forces anyone paying attention to ask what's being hidden behind the applause, and how long that illusion can realistically last before it collapses under its own weight.
They say. Unrivaled is sustainable. They say. They say. Ratings have come out for Unrivaled, and folks, if I was to say fall off a cliff, if I was to say significant drop off, I would be underselling.
For a long time, the message was relentless. Unrivaled was built to last. It was framed as the ultimate proof of concept for the future of women's basketball, a bold operation that would defy historical trends, grow its audience organically, and succeed where others supposedly fell short. Every interview echoed the same confidence. Every promotional clip reinforced the idea that this was different, smarter, and more sustainable. Investors bought into that vision. $1 million checks kept rolling in. The presentation was polished, the courts looked immaculate, and the athletes delivered high-level performances night after night. From the outside, it appeared unstoppable. The league sold itself as a modern blueprint, efficient, innovative, and immune to the struggles that had challenged previous ventures. But confidence alone doesn't create staying power. Repetition of a promise doesn't make it true. What actually sustains a league is consistent engagement, expanding viewership, and a public that knows when and why to tune in. That's where the cracks began to form. The narrative stayed loud, but the response grew quieter. Behind the scenes, momentum wasn't compounding, it was stalling. Growth wasn't accelerating, it was flattening. Yet, the messaging never adjusted. Instead of transparency, there was optimism. Instead of data-driven reflection, there were broad claims about long-term vision and future payoff. The problem with selling inevitability is that reality eventually demands proof. You can't indefinitely rely on belief while ignoring behavior. Fans either show up or they don't. Viewers either tune in or they move on. And when enthusiasm has to be constantly explained instead of demonstrated, that's a warning sign. Unrivaled wasn't lacking resources, talent, or ambition. What it lacked was evidence that the audience expansion everyone talked about was actually happening. Without that, even the most confident promises started to feel less like foresight and more like hope disguised as strategy.
And by kind of grim, I mean really, really grim. If you are Unrivaled, this is, if these are your ratings every single week on True TV, it's not the biggest disaster in the world, because by the looks of things, these True TV ratings were similar enough to what they were a year ago. Similar.
To understand how dramatic this reversal was, you have to revisit the beginning. The first season launched with undeniable buzz. Viewership surged. Social media exploded. Analysts rushed to declare women's basketball officially unstoppable. Headlines framed the moment as historic, permanent, and irreversible. Everything ahead seemed brighter than the arena lights themselves. But there was a problem hiding beneath that shine. Those numbers were almost too perfect. Around the same time, Nielsen quietly changed its measurement methodology. That shift inflated reported engagement across the board. Suddenly, everything looked bigger, stronger, and more popular than it actually was. It's like wearing shoes 2 sizes too large and insisting they fit perfectly. They might look impressive from a distance, but the moment you try to move naturally, the illusion collapses. That's exactly what happened when Season 2 arrived. Nearly 140,000 fewer viewers chose to watch on opening night. Daytime matchups performed even worse, barely crossing 107,000 viewers. Those figures didn't just suggest declining interest. They revealed a lack of awareness. Many potential fans didn't even know the league had returned. Talent alone isn't enough. You can have elite athletes, beautiful courts, and strong funding, but if no one knows when to watch, none of it matters. Visibility is oxygen. Without it, even the best product suffocates. Momentum, as it turns out, is often just timing mixed with luck. And once that luck fades, only genuine demand remains. In this case, the audience made its decision clear.
Cracking hella views to begin with. They wasn't even getting hella views at all last year. Now this year, their views is down by nearly 70%. This is very bad. Now, towards the decline of the WNBA season, towards the end of the season, we start seeing the WNBA kind of fudge the numbers, taking into account group party watch party viewerships, counting those into, effect like ball.
When the viewership data finally surfaced, calling it disappointing would be a dramatic understatement. This wasn't a mild dip or a temporary stumble. It was a full-scale collapse. Numbers didn't slide, they plummeted. They fell hard, broke through every reasonable expectation, and settled at levels that contradicted every promise made beforehand. This wasn't the kind of decline you spin away with scheduling excuses or algorithm changes. It was decisive, brutal, unavoidable. The kind of drop that forces executives to stop using optimistic language and start confronting uncomfortable truths. Whatever was supposed to be working simply wasn't. The contrast between expectation and outcome made the situation worse. This league wasn't marketed as a niche product. It was sold as revolutionary, the future, a corrected model that would expose everything others had supposedly done wrong. When something positioned that boldly collapses, the fall is louder and more damaging. What made it even harder to ignore was the speed. Viewership didn't erode, gradually it vanished. That kind of reaction usually signals disengagement, not dissatisfaction. People weren't angry. They weren't debating. They just stopped watching. And once apathy sets in, recovery becomes exponentially harder. Fans who feel disappointed can be won back. Fans who feel indifferent rarely return. The numbers didn't just challenge the league's narrative, they dismantled it. At that point, optimism stops being inspiring and starts sounding detached. Because data doesn't care about ambition. It only reflects behavior. And the behavior was clear. The audience moved on.